Well, welcome into the podcast, a friend, a fellow Notre Dame alumni, Kyle Rudolph. I appreciate you for joining in for Vikings week for us. Well, first of all, man, I got to ask, how has retirement been?
Retirement's going good, man. It's been an interesting transition for me. I think, like as a kid, you have all these dreams, and we're fortunate enough to achieve those dreams and get the opportunity to play in the NFL. And then when you're in the NFL and playing in the NFL, your main focus is how do I stay here as long as possible. You always have the development meetings and the counselors tell you, hey, let's prepare for life after football. And you're like, why would I prepare for life after football? Because if I take time away from preparing to stay in football, I'm just going to accelerate that timetable relatively quickly. So for me, like early in my career, it was just all about staying, all about, you know, earning my spot, establishing myself in the league. You always want to get to that second contract. And then for me, realistically, like about halfway through my career, I started to have other interests and to start to get involved in different things. And I think that's kind of what led me to going right into the next chapter for me after 12 years in the NFL. And I've been fortunate to have a couple of things that, keep me around sports and music and entertainment and things that I love and philanthropy. And so, being able to start a fundraising platform, which is now what I do on a daily basis, it's helped me with the transition greatly because I put the same time, effort, energy, and attention into All True, the fundraising platform that I started, that I did preparing for the Bears on a game week. So, to me, that's really helped my transition because I think oftentimes guys struggle the most when they don't have something that ultimately like kind of pulls them out of the game of football. More times than not, the game of football is taken away from us before we're ready. And, guys either, their bodies break down or ultimately the phone stops ringing and you're kind of on the outside looking in. And for me, I felt very fortunate my first year out. I kinda lost track. It's like, "Oh, OTAs are going on," or like, "Oh, it's training camp. Oh, there's games on TV." Like, you live in this bubble while you're playing in the NFL, and the rest of the world is completely irrelevant to what you're doing on a Tuesday in a game week, or what you have Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. And now that you're on the other side, it's fun, it's enjoyable for me, but realistically, I'm just very fortunate that I had something else that has really kind of pulled me out of my career as an active player.
So, what advice would you give for guys? So, maybe, first, second year, third year guys who are in their second or third year deals, guys who are closer, maybe towards the end of their career. How would you give advice to each one of those groups in terms of how they should approach life after football and what they should be thinking about, whether it's on an off day or in the off season, in terms of finding those type of interests that you were talking about?
Well, I think everyone kind of knows, what is your individual capacity. And, it might not be during the season because during the season, you're completely focused on, recovering your body, preparing for games, doing the best you can to be ready to go out on Sundays and play at a high level. Because, that's kind of what I joked around with our player development guy in Minnesota, who I had a great relationship with, in Les Pico. And I used to joke with Les all the time as a 21-year-old rookie, 22-year-old second year player. I'm like, I appreciate the advice to, start preparing for what's next in life after football. But as a 21-year-old, as a 22-year-old, uh, so much of this is new, and I'm just trying to figure out what my routine is now to stay here as long as I can and to set myself up to have success in this league. Then our conversation shifted as a 25, 26-year-old. I know what my routine is on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis throughout the course of the year. And I felt like once I established my routine for football, it really allowed my capacity to figure out what else I'm interested in, to get excited about other things outside of football. And for me, ultimately, that's where, I learned that I had this, huge desire for philanthropy and to help other people who want to not just make a difference, but leverage their platform to make a difference. And, yeah, you do those sorts of things when you're playing. And on Tuesdays for us, we would always go visit the Children's Hospital in Minnesota. Or, if one of my teammates was having an event, I would go to one of those events. And those are things that you can do. But ultimately, I found myself thinking, like, okay, now I'm an older player in this locker room. I have younger guys coming up to me asking me questions like, "Hey, what do you think about this?" Or "I want to do that. What's the best way to go about it?" So really trying to, pass my experience on to other guys throughout the course of the locker room has really turned into what I now do on a daily basis for other athletes, entertainers, musicians. And I never would have found that if I didn't kind of branch out outside of my normal weekly protocol of, all right, it's Monday, I need to get my body back from the game yesterday. Now Tuesday I have this, Wednesdays first and second down, Thursdays third down, Friday red zone. Like, that's our life for 17 weeks in the playoffs. But I felt like as an older player, not that I started planning for what was going to happen after football, but I started to develop interest and understanding of other things that I really enjoyed. And then I just turned it into what I want to do all the time post football.
And do you think when your career started coming to a close there at the end, like, do you think you were ready for that, or was that kind of did that still kind of hit you? I'm sure I know you were saying that you found other interests, but did that still hit you once it happened?
No, I think for me, like, again, I was very fortunate to have played as long as I did and ultimately be able to sit down with my wife and make a decision that, although there's options and the phone hasn't stopped ringing, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm more excited about other things than moving my family for the fourth time in 4 years and going to play on another team. And so for me, literally, I remember I was in California. We had just, you know, the company All True that I started in 2021 when I was still an active player. We had four co-founders and an intern. We were scaling to almost 10 full-time employees, and we're meeting with these employees that we hired in Southern California. And it was March of 2023. So free agency was kind of in the heat of things. Murph, our agent at Athletes First, kept calling me, "Hey, I'm talking to this team, I'm talking to that team," and it was kind of just all in the background for me. I was like, "Yeah, that's cool." Like, a couple opportunities that might have been interesting for me. I'm like, "Yeah, you just do your thing and let me know." And ultimately, I went home from a full day of meetings in LA with all these new employees. I picked up my phone, I called Murph, and I was like, "You can tell every team that we're talking to, I'm done. I'm more excited about the growth of this company and the opportunity to like take this to the next level than I am to go be tight end for the Vegas Raiders or the Cincinnati Bengals or whoever it was that we were talking to at that time." And he was like, "Are you sure about that?" Like, he never really saw me as someone that would tell him, like, "Hey, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore." And for me personally, I had never really thought about it either. Because as I said when we kind of first started talking, I never thought about the end. Like, you always think about what the dream is and chasing the dream and fulfilling the dream and staying in as long as you possibly could. But for me in that moment, like, I knew right away. I was like, it's time for me to be over. And I think that's what's allowed me over the last you know, season and a half to be able to watch football and enjoy football and be around the game in a small capacity with some of the broadcasting stuff that I've done to where now I can just enjoy being on the other side. I don't have any resentment for the game of football or desire to still be out there.
That's pretty cool. Talking with some football stuff, what do you think from your experience from you now watching the game? Why do you think it's such a difficult transition for a lot of guys at our position going from college to the pro level at such an early stage?
Well, I mean, I think the biggest transition is that, offenses are starting to evolve to more of the college style where you don't have to put your hand in the ground and block, defensive ends and outside linebackers like I did when I got to the NFL, and it was Julius Peppers and Israel Adonijah and Clay Matthews and Willie Young and Cliff Averill and like all these dudes that like at Notre Dame, I wasn't seeing guys like that line up from across from me. And, the most of the time, I wasn't a great blocker in college, but, I was big and strong enough to kind of get in the way long enough. And, I had some really good tight end coaches over the course of my time at Notre Dame. And it was like, run blocking for us is spacing and timing. And if you just hold enough space long enough so the back can get through, it's a win. We're not interior offensive linemen that have to like drive dudes off the ball and do stuff like that. Um, but when you get to the next level and you're expected to be out there first, second, and third down, and you want to be a guy who can be counted on in every situation of the game, it's a lot harder than, hey, we're going to put you out there on first and second down, but you're just going to run a flat route or a quick slant and we'll run an RPO and you don't have to touch anyone. No, you need to cut Julius Peppers off on the backside when he's lined up in the C gap. And oh, by the way, the ball's probably going to bend right back to you, and you're at the point of the tack. You're not on the backside of the play. So I think that's the biggest thing. You see some of these young tight ends that just get embarrassed in the run game. That offensive coordinators have to figure out, like, okay, I need to keep him on the field because he can't just go in every time it's a pass. And if we're going to have any bit of um, unpredictability, like he has to be out there on first and second down, and we have to be able to run the football. So I think that's the biggest transition. In the pass game, I don't necessarily, I think once you get the speed of the game, which, for me, the transition from high school to college and then college to the NFL was really no different. Like I remember my first 7-on-7 at Notre Dame. I'm like, man, I'm never going to catch a ball in college football. Like, this is just too fast. Like, I cannot, things are moving too quickly. Like, I'll never get open. I don't know, up from down, left from right. And then the next 7-on-7, it's like, oh, things are starting to slow down a little bit. And then, like, by training camp that summer, you start to get more comfortable. Then you play some games and you figure it out. The NFL was the same way. I didn't have an off season as a rookie. It was straight into training camp after the lockout, much like you coming through the pandemic off season. Like
Mhm.
you're just dropped into an NFL training camp, and I'm like, oh my God, like I'm never gonna catch a ball in the NFL because as soon as I think I'm open, I'm like getting smacked by a safety or a linebacker, and it was zoned, and I probably should have sat in that window. Instead, I ran right through and got my head taken off. But the speed always slows down in the pass game. So I think the biggest thing is just the physicality at the point of attack in the run game.
So how did you feel like your game evolved from like say year 1 to year 6, and then from year 6 to your final year in year 12? Like how did those kind of stages go for you in your career?
For me, I would say the biggest evolution of my game was going from a liability pass blocking, run blocking to being someone who could be counted on and someone that was viewed as one of the better blockers at our position later in my career. Ultimately, it was something that I had to do. Playing in Minnesota with Adrian Peterson and Dalvin Cook, we had a bunch of really good backs up there over the years, even Latavius Murray, Jarek McKinnon. We were going to run the football. And if I didn't figure it out, I wasn't going to play. And it was something that, for me, the pass game, I kind of joke around when I talk to people about the pass game, like you can't lose something you never had. And I've never been fast in my life. So like speed was never a part of my game. And ultimately I think guys that come into the NFL and it's like, hey, they're a speed guy, they're a quickness guy. Like year 1 and year 10 is gonna look a lot different. Like at year 10, when you're in your mid 30s, you're not going to be as fast and quick as you were when you were in your mid 20s and you got in the NFL. And so for me, from the pass game standpoint, like, yes, in year 10, year 12, I was still bigger than everyone that I was going against, whether it be a linebacker or safety. So my skill set really never changed. But I felt like my game evolved because I got so much smarter. I was able to recognize situations, recognize coverages, understand tendencies a lot more because early in my career, I was just worried about what the hell I had to do on the play that was called for us on offense. And then by the time I like got my stance and realized that, okay, I got to run this route, like, oh, the ball was already gone. And year 6, year 10, you hear the play call in the huddle, like what you have and your responsibility is kind of second nature. Now you get to the line of scrimmage and I'm looking at, okay, do I have a 6 technique that I got to get around, or do I have a wide 9? I'm playing the Detroit Lions and I basically have free access into the secondary. Who's covering me? Are they matching me in zone? So it's a zone coverage, but really this Mike linebacker has me one-on-one in quarters, and I can go wherever I want against him. I'm not going to just sit here. So I think for me as a player in the pass game, all of that understanding of coverages and schemes, it helped me a ton to still be productive. I year 7, 8, 9, even year 10, that as I was in year 1, 2, and 3.
All right, so before we let you out of here, you talked about one of the biggest hits you've ever took. I don't know if you knew this, but Lance Briggs actually does a show on this with ALLCITY and CHGO. Steven, do you have the clip of Briggs? Okay, Steven's gonna pull up a clip here real quick of his reaction after you had said that.
That boy forgot the whole damn game.
Listen, we're years removed from the league now. For years, I have a lot of respect for Kyle. One of the things about that play, because he actually mentioned that when I was on the top 100, when I was, I think it was my lowest number, like 20, I don't know, 23, 25, somewhere around there. Yeah, it was for the NFL top 100. That was, Kyle. They interviewed Kyle, and when he talked about it, he said, "No, like I've never been hit as hard as Lance Briggs," and they showed the clip. So what happened was, when you break down your opponent, when they get into the red zone, when Vikings get into the red zone, Kyle Rudolph gets the ball. I mean, it goes from like 20% chance of him getting the ball to like 85 because they were throwing it to him in the red zone all the time. He was scoring a lot of touchdowns for him. So as soon as we get into the red zone, I know based off of this formation, he's coming across the field. Now, what I was really good at doing was not allowing people to know that I was going to hit him. So I'm looking at the quarterback, but I can see him out of the corner of my eye coming. I know the route. I look at him. I know exactly the path that he's coming on.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, as he gets close, I'm still looking at the quarterback, right? So as he gets close, I'm looking at the quarterback, and I lean into it and get. I mean, I'm telling you, when you feel the, right? I'm all of that. I felt, it was a solid hit, and after I hit it, I'm still looking at the quarterback. I'm moving to where the ball's going.
So just your reaction to that, and then maybe a favorite Bears Vikings memory from your career.
Oh, no, I mean, it goes back to what I was saying earlier. For me, I was a second-year player in the league, and Lance had been in the league for double-digit years, multiple, Pro Bowls over the course of those years. And, like his understanding of football as opposed to mine, like, hey, I knew I had a shallow cross on that play, and, I'm trying to figure out, okay, Lance looks like he's dropping in zone, so now I'm going to turn and get my eyes back to the quarterback and let him know, like, I'm ready for the football. Well, if he would have looked me up and I knew he was matching me, I would have been more aware that this guy's going to come knock my head off if I don't pay attention. And it really shows the understanding of a guy who had been in the league for 12, 13 years, as opposed to me in my second year, just trying to figure out, okay, like I got the shallow cross, I got to clear it out for the receiver that's outside of me on the Z. It looks like he's dropping in zone, so now I'm not worried about him anymore because he didn't come play me and match me in man. And no, it was, I think about those Bears teams that we played against in 2011, 12, 13, with Lance Briggs and Brian Urlacher, the Peanut Tillman out on the outside. I already talked about Israel and Pep on the edges. Like their defense, they were monsters. And, we had a ton of battles with the Bears over the years. And I think, it really kind of applies to the game this weekend. The records go out the window. Like it doesn't matter if a team is 10-2 or 2-10 when, the Bears come to Minnesota and play at US Bank Stadium, or when we go to Chicago and play at Soldier Field, records go out the window. And Soldier Field was a place that I did not have a lot of success at throughout the course of my career. I think we won like 2 or 3 times over my 10 years in Minnesota. And, early on, like there were a lot of times the Bears had much better records than we did. And then the later half of my career, with the exception of maybe a year, we had better records than they did. But for me, it was the coolest part about the Vikings Bears, particularly at Soldier Field. You could throw records out the door, like they don't matter whatsoever. It was a game that was always a close one, always went down to the wire.
Well, I appreciate you coming on, my man. Should be a good one this weekend for us. Like you said, records kind of get thrown out the window with these type of games, so I'm looking forward to it. Should be a lot of fun, and hopefully the Irish can keep it going here and sneak in the playoff and make something happen.
Yeah, we got 2 games to take care of. I don't think they can afford to drop either one, so we'll go up to New York City this weekend and take care of Army, and then it's always fun to go out to Southern California and get a win in the Coliseum the week of Thanksgiving. It's actually funny. It brings me back to that Lance Briggs story. After he knocked me out on the field, I completely. It was the Sunday after the USC Notre Dame game. And I got every concussion. I said this at Barstool, and they were asking me about the hit. Um, I got every question wrong imaginable. Who we're playing, what month it was. Like it was embarrassing. But then I got to the locker room and like I saw my Notre Dame gear like hanging in Everson Griffin's locker and Matt Khalil's locker, and it like sparked my memory right away. I'm like, oh yeah, like it was just Thanksgiving. Notre Dame beat USC last night. We were watching the game, and I like ran back into the training room, and I'm like, it's November. Like I remember we're playing the Bears, and they were like, yeah, just hit the showers, bro. Like you're done. Go sit next to your boy Harrison Smith, who got knocked out in the first half.
Oh, geez. That's hilarious. That's a good tidbit. Well, thanks, Kyle, man. I appreciate you, and we'll talk soon here.
Likewise. Have a good one. Not too much luck this weekend, though, brother.
All right, man. Appreciate you.